Hello friends, I'm Jonathan Pishner with Apex Counseling, and in honor of Suicide Prevention Month, we are continuing our series on suicide, how to prevent suicide, and today we're going to talk about the warning signs that someone might be considering hurting or killing themselves. And this video probably took more thought than any other video that we're doing in this series because when it comes to signs that suicide may be occurring, there's two basic categories. There's risk factors, and then there's warning signs. And I basically decided to not do the risk factors because to put it into a video of the length I usually put out, there's so much to say about that it becomes very unwieldy very quickly unless you're a clinician. Most of these videos I make for the non-clinical person, either for the loved ones, for other professional helpers who aren't counselors, or for people themselves who might be in pain. Doing the risk factors was just going to become too much. So if you're interested in the things in a person's life that can maybe be a potential risk factor, the National Institute of Mental Health's website has a great article outlining a lot of them. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline website has a good article outlining a lot of them. So I definitely encourage people to check that out, but it was just going to be too unwieldy to include them in this video. So today I wanted to talk about just the warning signs that potentially somebody might be thinking of hurting or killing themselves. And one of the things I want to say about that is I'm going to go over the warning signs, but it's important to understand that many suicides do occur without any of these warning signs becoming present or becoming noticeable. So I want to make sure that that's very clearly stated. Sometimes these occur and you didn't see the warning signs because they weren't present or they weren't present in a noticeable way. So these are just behaviors that if you spot them, they're a sign that a person is at increased risk of potentially having a suicidal attempt. So here are the warning signs. The first one is previous suicide attempts. That's actually one of the best predictors. If somebody is going through tough times and they have in the past had a suicidal attempt, that's a great indication that extra support and extra care for that person is warranted, because if a person has made a suicide attempt in the past, statistically they are far more likely to have another suicide attempt later than the person who has never had one. So actually the first warning sign of could there be a suicidal attempt is, has the person had a previous suicide attempt? The number one risk factor. The second one, and this one is one that is fairly well known, but people who are disposing of their possessions, especially treasured possessions. If a person has treasured possessions and suddenly they're giving them away, not even selling them, but like I'm selecting who I'm going to give my prized car to that I love. I'm going to give it to my person that I really care about. If they start giving away those things they really, really care about, that's one of the big warning signs that essentially this person may already have a plan and intent to kill themselves, and they're signaling that by making sure that the stuff that they care about goes elsewhere. And the same thing goes for making just general plans for any of their afterlife care. If there's somebody suddenly decides they need a will, that's less of a warning sign. But if it comes out of a clear blue sky, it could be a warning sign, especially if somebody's like 22 and doesn't have very much and they start talking about a will. That can be a potential warning sign. So watch out for the person trying to figure out what they're going to do with their treasured possessions. It could be an indicator that a lot of care and attention is needed here, because there could be an attempt. One of the ones that, this is one of the ones that's hardest to spot, because it's what we want. If somebody's depressed for a long time and then they suddenly become happy, that's actually a potential warning sign for suicide. Now it could also be just honest. It could be that a person somehow had a breakthrough, turned it around, something happened. But one of the things that potentially signals is if a person can't figure out a way out of their pain and they're suddenly happy, they may have figured out a way out of their pain. And one of the ways they may have done that is they've decided to end their pain permanently. So this one is really hard to spot because, man, that person in our life that's like hopeless and down and they're depressed and then suddenly they're happy again, that's what we wanted. And so we're predisposed to not question that very hard. And unfortunately, the opposite response is true. If suddenly, just out of a clear blue sky, they're great and they're fine, that needs questioning because that person may have made a decision that they're going to end their life, and that's why they're happy, is because they know their pain is coming to an end very, very soon. So make sure to watch out for that as a warning sign. And along with that, inappropriately saying goodbye. So, if you hang out with somebody you know and care about, or maybe you're even a professional helper, maybe you're an athletic coach, and you're used to saying bye to a person in a particular way, and then instead this time they make it like strangely over emotional. Like if you're a coach and they leave to say goodbye and they're like, hey, before I go, I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate everything you're doing, and you've really made a difference in my life. And that can be a signal that they're actually saying goodbye in a more permanent way. So, and once again, just like all of these, it may be just a completely honest thing. Like that person felt very moved by something in that moment, but sometimes that's a signal that they're saying goodbye permanently. If you're aware that that person's been having a tough time, maybe furthering the conversation, talking to them a little further, finding out if maybe something deeper is going on is the right move, because that can be one of the signs that a suicidal attempt is coming. And this is another one that's hard to spot because, man, somebody says something really nice to us, we're generally, feeling emotionally happy. We're not inclined to question it too much, but this is one, if you know the person's been going through some kind of difficulty, maybe question it a little more. Talking about suicidal ideation. So if you watched our other video, you know there's different levels of suicidal thought and how people move through the steps of potentially hurting or killing themselves. So sometimes people will say out loud things that count as passive suicidal ideation. They'll say things like, man, I just really wish I wasn't here anymore. Or they might say they wish they were dead. They might say, man, I really wish you didn't have to worry about me anymore. So those are statements that, if they're inside of a person's head, we would count them as passive suicidal ideation. Now, if you remember my video, I did say that most people experience passive suicidal ideation. When it's said out loud, it could be passive suicidal ideation, or they could be playing it down a little bit. They may already be in active suicidal ideation. They may already be formulating a plan or intent. So if it's said out loud, it should actually be treated as if it's more serious than passive suicidal ideation, because it could indicate, they're already doing the cost benefit of being alive, and they're just kind of either floating that out there, or they could just be in enough pain that they're letting some slip out. But don't trust that necessarily it's just a person having a bad day and having some passive suicidal ideation. If it's being said out loud, it could indicate that maybe they're already actively thinking about it. They could already be actively formulating a plan. So definitely that's a moment to take some more care and concern and to try and see about getting that person some help. So that's a few of the warning signs. There are others, but in going through all of them and trying to figure out which ones would be the most helpful to people, these are the ones that really demonstrate the most statistical likelihood, it would seem, of if a suicidal attempt is going to take place. These warning signs are the ones that show that a person is statistically more likely to attempt hurting themselves. So hopefully this is helpful for you. If you're a loved one, if you're a professional helper and you spot these warning signs, please talk talk to this person, please talk to them about potentially getting some help, getting in with a counselor, checking themselves into a crisis unit, into a psychiatric facility if they need to, because if a person's having that much pain that they're thinking of hurting or killing themselves, they really do need help, because almost always the pain is a solvable problem. But if the body dies, we can't fix the mind. So these are the ones to look out for. There are others, so if you want to find out more, please go to some of those websites I mentioned. Google just suicidal warning signs. There are tons upon tons of resources out there in order for you to learn more about this. But hopefully this information today is helpful to someone. I sincerely hope that maybe this video one day would allow just one person to get spotted before they make a suicidal attempt, so maybe they can get some help. If that happens, it's all worth it. So thank you for hanging out with me for a few minutes today. I am Jonathan Pishner with Apex Counseling, and I will see you next time.